this morning. I am Ann San Roman, Assistant Principal of Travis Ranch School and Academic Chair with the Reach Foundation. Experience Your Environment aims to educate, enrich, and energize our families and students to learn, observe, and protect our environment. This year, we partnered with the Crystal Cove Conservancy, Inside the Outdoors, in the Placentia-Yorba Linda Unified School District to invite you to discover nature in your own yard, balcony, or your neighborhood in a 3-part challenge. During the 2 weeks of the Bioblitz, 150 observations were made, identifying 67 of 88 species that were observed locally and posted on the CCAP. This was our first year trying this new format, and you engaged, giving us a great start. We want to acknowledge that some of you made observations that were not posted to iNaturalist, so I think we could have easily had over 300 observations. Thank you for your outstanding participation. Yay, everyone. If you had fun, type yes in the chat box now. Together, in part 2, we successfully created the first PYL USD Community Field Guide with contributions from many of you. To recognize your work and contributions, we have selected 6 winners and will announce their names at the end of this event, so please stay tuned until the end. On behalf of the Reach Foundation, thank you for your support, active participation, and for experiencing your environment. Now, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Jenna Rassick, our STEM project lead and PYL USD teacher.
Good morning. It's nice to see you. It's fun to see some faces that go with the names of the slides that we've received. Our goal with this project was to really have you spend a little more time connecting with the community, connect our community together, take time to notice and appreciate the wonder and beauty around us, and inspire curiosity. We were hoping to inspire curiosity in our students, but what we found was that we were inspired by your curiosity. We love your submissions, your field guide, and if you keep creating, we will keep adding. So we'll keep that field guide live and dynamic. We'll keep adding to it as the year goes on. I would love to keep getting slides from you. So we'll share that. And our next step, I met with a wonderful gentleman yesterday who is he's been involved with the Reach Foundation and our school district. And he works for a company that works on environmental aspects with water. And so what he has offered is we can have up to 10 water quality test kits that we can use in our community. So you could test beach water, you can test the water at Tri-City Park, at Yorba Regional Park, but it would be outside water. And there are so many different tests inside the kit that your family could use, and all the directions, all the materials, everything you need. But basically it's a chemistry experiment. And then there's a web base where you can enter all the information that you find, so we can track water quality in our environment all around us. So if you are interested, we'll send out an email and your family can let us know if you are interested, or you can just email me. I'm the same person you shared your slides with. So I just want to say thank you so much for your curiosity. Thank you for inspiring us, and I'm excited to see what you do next. And thank you to all of our partners doing this work with us.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Yareeb with Inside the Outdoors. We are part of the Orange County Department of Education, and we're the environmental education program administered by the Orange County Department of Education, and we are so happy to have you all here. I was really excited to see the community field guide and all the work that you've done, all the observations with the CCAP. It's fantastic that you were able to get outdoors, whether it's your balcony, your yard, your neighborhood, or even a local park. As you can see, I am actually virtually right now in your local regional park of Carbon Canyon. And we also have my friend Amy Erickson, who is live at the park right now. So really quick, I'm going to share my screen. And once again, as I mentioned, we are part of the Orange County Department of Education. And we're excited to be here today, joined by all of you. And Amy, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. How about that? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Erickson, and I am a field naturalist with Inside the Outdoors. I have worked here for 14 years, taking students just like all of you out into nature in places like Carbon Canyon Regional Park. But even more exciting about this morning is not only is it my job to take students outside to nature, but I am excited to be with you today because I went to all different schools in the Placentia Yorba Linda School District. So I went to elementary school in Van Buren, I went to middle school at Kramer, and I graduated from El Dorado High School. So it's so fun for me to be here with you all today and share Carbon Canyon Regional Park. I'm here in the natural part of the park, which is what we're going to look at today, along with another part real nearby that isn't quite as natural. But before we go there, let's spend a few minutes talking about the history of Carbon Canyon Regional Park. You may have been here before, but you may not know why it's a park. It became a park in 1975 when the Olinda Oil Company donated the park to the county. They wanted to use land that was no longer able to be drilled for oil and turn it into a natural area for people to enjoy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to focus on the natural parts of the park, the man-made parts of the park, and how people impact both of those. And then we might talk about a few things that we can do to help minimize the impact that we make on some of these natural areas. So, let's go ahead and look at that slide that shows the map of the park. So here's a good map of Carbon Canyon Park. If you visit the park, you can pick up a map like this at the park office, or actually in front of the office right now, since they're not quite open yet. But I just wanted to bring this up to show you there's both natural and man-made. That big pond in the middle, that's man-made. And all of the tennis courts and the playground structures and the roads, those were all built for the enjoyment of people to enjoy getting outdoors and being active and doing all sorts of great things. But I am in a natural part of the park right now, which is on the other side. So it's on the way far corner past those tennis courts, almost into Chino Hills State Park. And let's go ahead and let's take a look at where I am. Actually, let's go to the next slide real quick. Yeah, so first thing we're going to talk about is non-natural and invasive plants. Because, my friends, we have a lot of invasive plants growing here in Orange County. Now, you may be wondering, what does it mean to be non-natural or invasive? A non-natural plant is a plant that's from somewhere else, and its seeds ended up here, and they started to grow. And when it's invasive, that means it's growing really well in the new environment it's arrived in. In fact, it grows too well and it grows better than the native plant. And that is a problem. Does anyone know why it's a problem to have non-natural plants and invasive plants in a natural area? Raise your hand or type in the chat if you have an idea of why you think this might be a problem. I know it's kind of a tricky question. It's not something we've thought about much, but I'll go ahead and let you know. When I first got here this morning, I saw a baby bunny. And then I saw a whole little herd, I guess that's the right word, of baby quail and their mama running after them. There's been birds flying overhead, and I think I could even hear some bigger animals off in the distance. And my friends, all of those animals that I saw this morning here are native animals, which means they always have lived here and this is their natural habitat. But they also eat native plants, and they need those native plants to survive because they don't just eat them, they need them for shelter too. So if we take out the native plants and let the invasive plants grow, are we going to have any room or for shelter or any food for our native animals to survive? It's going to be pretty hard for them to survive without the things they need like shelter and food. So let's talk about, well, I wouldn't say it's my favorite invasive plant, but it's my favorite one to talk about and tell people about, and that is wild mustard. And you can see in the picture here, that's a whole field of wild mustard. I bet you've seen it before. on the freeway when you're driving, or even down the road. On my way to the park this morning, I saw a ton of it growing all over the side of the road, and it's growing here in the park. So Yurib, if you want to spotlight me, and I'm going to turn my camera around, we can take a look at this wild mustard that's growing here in the park. So this is a huge area of mustard, and it's doing very well. All of its needs are being met. It has the water it needs, it has the soil it needs, and it has the space. And let's talk a little bit about why this is a problem. We already mentioned that it doesn't provide food and shelter for the native animals, but it does a little more that we need to be concerned about. The first thing is, as you can see on the slide here, that mustard plants grow thick. So what happens is, let me back up for a second and let me tell you how mustard got here, because mustard's been here for a couple hundred years. It was brought by explorers and colonists when they first came to California and wanted to start building towns and communities here. They thought it might be a crop that would grow well. Guess what? It grew too well, because mustard seed has adaptations to grow perfectly in the Southern California environment. Its seeds are really, really powerful, and they can stay on the ground for up to 9 years before they ever even start to grow. So a seed can lay around until it has all of its needs, and then once a mustard seed starts to grow, it grows fast, and it grows faster than the native plants. So we have all these mustard seeds, growing and filling up all the space before the native plants can start growing. You can see in the picture there and in my screen, you can see how thick this mustard is. There is no room for any native plants to grow in between that mustard. And then the mustard will start to take the resources that the native plants need, like the soil and the water. And pretty soon, if you have mustard growing in an area, it will stop all the native plants from growing in that area, which means no food and no shelter for those native animals. The other problem is what's on that picture on the right-hand side, and you can see right here in our screen, and that is what happens with the mustard at the end of the season. Because mustard plants only grow for one season and then they die. But when they die off, they spread their seeds throughout the whole area. Some of those seeds are carried off on the fur of other animals, or they get washed away in the winter rains and they go to other areas. But all of these dead branches are left behind. And those dead branches are what we call fire ladders. These dead branches can easily catch on fire, and they burn quickly, and they're really tall. So if they start to burn and they burn above the other plants, they create a ladder of fire, and they can catch some of the trees nearby on fire. I know we've all experienced a lot of different wildfires happening in our communities this year, and it's sad to see, and nobody wants to see some of our natural areas burned. And we have to remember that those natural areas are burning hotter, and they're burning farther than they normally would because of these invasive plants like the mustard. They provide lots of fuel, and they help that fire spread. So I'm like a lot of you, and I really like the yellow flowers when I see them in the spring. And it does make me sad to know that they're not very good for the environment. But I just want to share this information so you understand what's the problem with having these around. Now, you may be asking yourself, why don't we get rid of these? And we've tried. We've tried and we've tried, but what happens is, remember we mentioned, and I think I saw it in the chat that someone mentioned, those mustard seeds can sit around for 9 whole years. So even though we can pull the mustard out and chop it down and mow it down, the seeds still get left behind and they're just waiting for their time to grow. So we won't probably ever get rid of mustard here in Orange County, but we can do our best to make sure that we take out as much as we can to stop as many seeds as we can from growing. And then maybe those native plants have a better time to survive. And I want to show you really quick, if I can get up close. Yurib, are you all able to see the flowers here?
We can see that, Amy. Thank you.
Awesome. So these flowers, each little flower on the end of this stem produces a seed pod. And each of those seed pods has about 12 seeds. So think about that. Look at all of these flowers and imagine each of these flowers producing 12 new seeds. Is anyone beginning to understand why mustard is so prevalent in our areas here in Orange County? Yeah, this is why we see it. It's everywhere. But there are things that we can do to help those native plants. So, Yuri, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh my goodness, I forgot about this. I put this in because I had a chance to look at the field guides that all of you have been contributing to. And I was so excited and I wanted to be a part of the field guide as well. So what we're going to do today is we are going to add 3 more plants to that field guide. And this is our first plant because it's important to know about the invasive plants just as much as it's important to know about the native ones. So let's go ahead, and if you have a piece of paper or you have your field guide with you, go ahead and grab that now, and we can make a drawing of the wild mustard plant. And I'm going to point out a few features that are important to make sure you include in your drawing. You can notice the mustard plant has wide leaves, and those leaves provide a lot of ground cover, making it hard for those native seeds to grow. And then coming out of those wide leaves, you have long stems that grow very tall above the other plants. And that is why the mustard plant tends to get more sunlight than the native one. So make sure when you're drawing that plant, you draw wide leaves near the bottom and tall stems coming out of the center. And on the end of each of those stems, don't forget to add all of those flowers because each stem has tons of flowers. I'm looking at the one in front of me and oh my goodness, I can't even count how many flowers. Oh, Esther, I see the question that popped up. Yeah, I am in Carbon Can right now in the city of Brea. Yep, I'm at the far end, almost into Cheeto Hills State Park, but still in Carbon Canyon. All right, and so when you draw those flowers, make sure you include a lot of them. So I would say there's at least 15 to 20 flowers on each of those stems. So then, wow. Do we have any mathematicians in the room? If each flower makes 12 seeds, and I'm looking, and there are 20 flowers on a stem, how many seeds is one stem going to make? Go ahead and type your answer in the chat.
All right, that's a great question, Amy. Let's see if we get any responses in the chat here.
Yeah, let me repeat it again. So there's 12 seeds in every seed pod, and each flower produces one seed pod. And let's say there's 20 flowers on one stem. Whoa, Shohan, I saw your answer there. 2,400. That is a huge amount of seeds. And imagine all of those growing and beating out the native plants. I think we can begin to understand why this is such a problem. And you know what, my friends? I am not a big fan of talking about problems. I like solutions as well. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I think that's going to show us a couple solutions and things we can do to help beat out this invasive mustard. So one idea I had is that you can research what other invasive plants grow in your neighborhood. there is mustard, I'm sure, in your neighborhood, but there's probably other plants as well, such as the castor bean plant and artichoke thistle. Those are ones that you can look up later if you want more information on those. And you can also replace some of those invasive plants with native plants. So if you have mustard growing in your yard or other invasive plants that you learn about, you can pull those out and plant native plants in their place. You can also volunteer for mustard removal or habitat restoration. There's fun events where people go out just to take out mustard plants, and they pull them out by the roots and they put them all in trash cans and take trash bags to take them away to make sure it's not growing there anymore. And if you want to be involved in that, the OC Parks website is a good place to look. And also we can provide the Placentia Yorba Linda School District with more resources as we learn of more as things start opening up again. The next thing you can do, wherever you are, if you're out hiking or exploring and you see a mustard plant, you can pull it out. And you could crumple up, maybe bring a trash bag along with you to shove it in there. And every mustard plant that you pull out of the ground, remember, that is a lot of seeds because it probably has more than one stem. So that's going to be thousands of seeds that you can remove from the habitat just by pulling one plant. So these are just a few ideas that I have. Does anybody else have any other ideas of how you can help get rid of invasive plants or help the native plants grow in your neighborhood?
All right, that's a great question, Amy. So let's see if anybody responds in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. What are some other ideas that you have to help with this problem with invasive plants like the mustard? So what do we think? Santa and Sohan, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can answer in the chat, or anyone else also can answer. What are some other ideas that we might have?
How about clearing out the mustard plants and then planting fruit trees or vegetables?
Ooh, that's an excellent idea, because fruit trees and vegetable plants, they provide food for us, right? For people. Yeah, so in your yard, you may not have a lot of native animals that visit because they don't have maybe some other needs of their other needs being met, but you can meet your own needs by removing that mustard plant and planting a vegetable garden. Vegetable gardening is one of my favorite hobbies, so I always encourage people to plant more fruit trees and vegetable plants.
That's mine too, Amy.
Nice. We'll have to compare gardening notes sometime.
Yes.
Amy, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have seen where we could hire like herds of goats to come and clean up hillsides. Would goats eat the mustard? And if so, maybe we could clear out some hillsides, feed some goats, have some fun with that, and then quickly plant some native species or something, kind of like what Giselle was talking about, put something in their place so that they don't grow back quickly.
Yeah, and that is a strategy that people have used and ranchers have been using, but unfortunately, it's not a permanent solution, because remember I mentioned that those seeds can lay around for up to 9 years. So even though we pull out the plants, there are seeds waiting to take their place the next year. But I think you may be onto something. If we could bring out goats every single year, and also people crews of people pulling out these plants, if we worked really hard, and we could definitely remove that mustard and replace it with native plants. The problem is so much of California does have this mustard that we need to start focusing small and working on small areas in our communities. And then hopefully we can get kind of an immunity with the mustard and we can start working on some of those bigger areas. But I like your thinking. And that's a good way to think, is if we start on our own communities using all the resources we have, maybe even goats, which happen to be my favorite animal, then maybe we can do something about this mustard. All right, I know that you're all thinking about different ideas, and go ahead and if an idea comes to you as we're continuing today, go ahead and type it in the chat. But I think it's time for us to move on to our next section because we've talked a lot about mustard, but there are other areas of the park like the Redwood Groves. And before I turn this over to Yarib, because he's going to tell you a little bit more about these redwoods, why I go to a different part of the park, let's just think about, we've just talked about how mustard is invasive and it's non-native or non-natural. The Redwood Grove is also non-native or non-natural, but it is not invasive because it needs humans to take care of it. Its needs are not met. So Yarib, why don't you tell us a little bit more, take us on a virtual hike, and I'll join you all in a few minutes in my new location.
All right, thanks, Amy. We'll see you back in a little bit. And as you can see also in the background here, I have virtually the Redwood Grove that you can also find in Carbon Canyon Regional Park. And as Amy mentioned, redwood trees are not native to Southern California, but they are not invasive. As you remember with the mustard plant, she mentioned invasive, they're gonna thrive in the environment of Southern California weather. With redwood groves, there's a lot of help that's needed for them to survive. And the history of the Redwood Groves in Carbon Canyon. So let's take a little hike here. This is Carbon Canyon, and this is heading to the Redwood Groves. What I want you to notice here is on the left side what those hills look like. And as we approach the Redwood Groves, you can see the difference. It's quite different from that hillside that we're approaching. These Redwood Groves have been here since 1975. There's over 200 Redwood Groves that were planted here by the city. And in Southern California, because they are not native to this area, there's a lot of help that's needed with watering and spraying down of water throughout the hot summer months. But as you can see, right when you walk underneath with all that shade, the temperature completely drops in this area of Carbon Canyon Regional Park. It does provide habitat for certain animals that are native to the area, such as raptors. There's hawks that you see in the area. There's coyotes that will frequent this area of Carbon Canyon, rabbits as well. But unlike Northern California coastal redwood groves, some of the plants that are found on the ground, like ferns, you will not find in this area. So this is actually covered by mulch to protect the area as visitors in the park visit this Redwood Grove. So in Southern California, in Carbon Canyon, this is actually one of the largest redwood groves that we have in Southern California with over 200 trees. And the trees in Carbon Canyon actually are probably about 100 feet tall, with its cousins in the north growing up to 300 feet in height. So you can see quite the difference. So this picture that you see on the right of the slide, those are redwood trees from Northern California. So you can see that height of over 300 feet versus 100 feet in Carbon Canyon. And again, that has to do with some of the resources that are not found here, which is the water. So a lot of the water in Northern California for these tall redwood trees, which is the tallest tree in the world, can actually come from the fog that comes in from the coast. So these are coastal redwood trees. And that's how it can reach those leaves that are really high up on that tree trunk that you can see here. Has that reddish bark that's very thick, needs lots of rain. Again, living in the coast of California, where the lowest portion of redwood groves that are native could be found in the Monterey area. So if you think about Monterey Bay Aquarium, that's actually the lowest area, and it's going to go all the way up north up to Oregon. That's where they're found because of that weather and that water that's needed for them to survive. Now, what other observations do you see from the redwood trees? What did you notice from the video? What do you notice in this picture? And then one thing I'm going to show you here is the difference of trees from Southern California and Northern California. So on the left, you have two pictures of the trees that are found in Carbon Canyon. On the right, that is a redwood grove in Northern California, which is Big Basin Redwood State Park. And notice the difference of that tree trunk and how big the size is compared to the trees that we have in Carbon Canyon.
Yurib, those are beautiful pictures of the redwood trees. We do have one question from Sohan, and Sohan is asking, are there mountain lions?
So Han, that is a really good question. And mountain lions are native to Orange County. They are native to areas of Southern California, and they have been spotted in this area. And the reason why is Carbon Canyon, while there is a lot of people and a lot of human-made areas and wilderness, it also is right next to Chino Hill State Park, which is an even bigger area, and it's a wildlife corridor, which means a lot of animals are traveling back and forth through that open space of Chino Hill State Park. So if you get a chance to visit the Redwood Grove and go on these trails, you will actually see signs that let you know that mountain lions can be found in this area of Orange County.
Ooh. Hey, and Yurib, I just want to let you know I am back here with you guys again. And I just saw Sanaa's question about other animals that you might see in this area. And yes, I did see those mountain lion signs when I was heading down the trail this morning. And that is why all the people that have been passing by me, they have their dogs on leashes, because that's really important, because if the dogs go running off trail, they might run into a mountain lion. But the good thing about mountain lions is they really don't like people, and they don't like the noise we make. They don't like being around us. So if they hear you coming, most of the time, they're going to run the other way. So if you stay on the trails and stay in areas where people are using the park, then I think you can feel pretty confident that you'll have a safe experience out there, just as long as you're aware of what's going on around you. But let's talk about the other animals that might live out there. So this morning, when I first got here, like I think I mentioned before, I saw a bunch of baby bunnies and a bunch of baby quail. And if you've never seen a quail before, they are one of the coolest looking animals. First of all, they're our state bird. It's the California state bird. And they look just like the cartoon pictures you may have seen. And they have these funny little things that are on the top of their heads that kind of bob along as they run around. And they make really cool noises too that sounds like they're saying, Chicago, Chicago. So when you're out hiking and you hear a sound like that, that might be a quail. Other animals that you might find around here are things like possums or raccoons. And I bet there's a bunch of ground squirrels that live in this park here. I haven't seen any yet today, and I'm actually pretty surprised by that. But I bet if I hung out here all day, I would probably see a lot more ground squirrels. But we've talked a lot about mammals. There's birds around here too. Well, I guess I mentioned the quail, that's a bird. But there's other birds that live here. I've seen an American robin today. I've seen hawks flying overhead. And I've seen a lot of little brown birds that have been too far away for me to identify what they are. So I just call them by my favorite species name, little brown bird. And that's an important thing to talk about, because they eat a lot of the native plants that we're going to be looking at in just a moment. But before we do that, you know what, Yurib? I was taking a look at the Bioblitz that all the Placentia Yorba Linda students have been working on. And I noticed that a lot of those spots that people looked at were in Carbon Canyon. So I thought it would be fun for us to pull up that Bioblitz and see what people already found in the park and mark down. And then maybe I can see if I see any of those around. So Yurib is pulling up the Bioblitz that all of you worked on. And he's going to take us down into the Redwood Grove area. And let's click on one of those red dots and let's see what other people have found here in Carbon Canyon.
All right, Amy, so I have it pulled up right now. I have the Bioblitz. I see some of the points that people were able to identify. So I'm clicking on something. So here's the Redwood Grove here, and right next to it, first thing I see is somebody was able to identify a red-tailed hawk.
Oh, and I think someone just mentioned that in the chat as well. Wow, I'm beginning to think this is a really good habitat for red-tailed hawks. Excellent. Who was the person that added that to the Bioblitz?
The observer says Lydia Avidra.
Oh, excellent. I think I saw some other observations by that person as well. Let's see what else is going on here in the Redwood Grove.
All right, so if I go a little bit over to the left, I see some mule fat, and I know that's because Carbon Canyon Creek runs through that area.
Yes, and mule fat is one of my favorite native plants because it grows next to water. And I'm a big fan of areas next to water. And did you know that the mule fat was super important for everyone that's always lived here in California, starting with the first people? So it grows nice and straight. It makes straight arrows. It can be used for making baskets or even for making fences to keep animals out of your vegetable garden. Those are all really good uses, and it's a very cool plant. I think I saw some of my hike in here this morning. Let's click on one more and see what else people have looked at in the area.
I do see castor bean, which I believe you mentioned earlier when talking about invasive species of plants.
Yes, that is another invasive plant, and that's another one you see all over Orange County. And that's another one if you see in your neighborhood or your community that you can help in the removal of, so the native plants can grow in its place. Wow, you know what, Yarib? I noticed, well, first of all, I noticed that nobody added the redwood trees to our Bioblitz. And there's a lot of other plants out there that didn't make it onto there. So hopefully this will inspire you to get out to those redwood plants, use that Seek app, and add some more of those plants that haven't gotten onto our Bioblitz yet, and add them to the field guide. All right, so let's go back to our slides. And let's go ahead and, you know what, oh yeah, let's talk about this first before we move on. So we already talked about some things you can do to help with the mustard problem and invasive plants, but I want to talk about things that you can do if you are really interested in the trees. So here's some ideas I came up with of what you or your family can do to help the environment and help with human impact regarding trees. So you can research different trees that grow, that would grow well in your neighborhood and maybe provide food or shelter for the native animals. You can maybe plant one of those in your yard or encourage your community to plant those types of trees that would benefit those native plants and animals. Another thing you can do is research what trees would benefit your schoolyard and encourage those to be planted on school grounds. We don't always need to plant just native trees, right? We looked at the redwood trees. We learned that the redwood trees, they're not native, but they're not invasive. So there's a lot of other trees that fall into that same category. They don't hurt the native plants and animals that live here, and they do provide oxygen for us and all the plants and animals. They provide shelter for some native animals and some non-native animals that have moved into our communities. And they're just good for everyone to be around. We all like to be in areas that have trees. So sometimes the trees we have growing in our neighborhoods and schools, they aren't the right trees for the area because scientists are always learning new information. So if you have an idea that you would like to have some different trees, or if they're replacing the trees in your community or your school, you can be a part of that solution and help research and figure out what trees would be the best for which areas that you're talking about, either in your community or the school. Does anybody have any other thoughts about how you can help the trees grow in your neighborhood?
All right, let's see if anybody has any ideas.
What I see. Oh, so Sana is asking, when you have these redwood trees, do you spot skunks or raccoons nearby? You know what, Sana? I would assume so. Raccoons and skunks are both nocturnal animals. So they come out at night. And I haven't ever been in the redwood trees at night, but I would imagine that when everyone goes home and goes back to their houses, I bet we would, if we went out there, we would see some skunks and raccoons foraging for food and digging for grubs in that soil. Does anyone have any other questions about the trees or have an idea of how you would like to help the trees before we move on to our final area?
All right, I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now. I don't see any hands being raised.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about invasive plants and non-native trees. I think it's time we spend a little bit of time talking about native plants. And that's where I am right now. So if you want to go and spotlight my camera, I will take you on a little tour of some of the plants that we have growing here in the native garden. Now, first of all, this slide that's up, the native and butterfly garden, this is from a different part of the park. I took this picture and I was over there a little earlier today, but it is really crowded and there's a street nearby, and I didn't want all the car noise to interrupt me being able to share this information with you. So I found this other part of the park. And this is a native plant area that was restored a couple years ago. And all of the plants you can see, well, let me take that back. Most of the plants you see in the screen are native plants that provide shelter and food for the animals that live in this area. This first one here, this is white sage, and it smells really good. So if you ever see this plant, you can take a little bit of it, a leaf, you can crush it, and you can smell it in your, and it smells wonderful. In fact, throughout time, people have used the different sages kind of as perfume or cologne. They would use this to rub on their bodies so that maybe if they were going hunting, the animals wouldn't see them, or just maybe if they hadn't had a chance to get a shower in a few days, the sage smelled a little better than they did. But let's take a look at what else is growing here. Let's see. Oh, so here we have, you know, I am not totally sure of this species. This is a new one for me. It is a flowering plant, and I believe it's a tarweed. But that's the fun thing about native plants. There are so many of them. I am still learning all of them and still trying to remember all those names. So I encourage all of you to take a look if you come out and use your Seek app to identify this yellow flowering plant. And let's see what else we have going on here. Oh, because down here, let's go over. Oh no, who knows what this is? Does anyone see the plant growing right in the middle of our native plant garden?
What? Mustard.
Yes, there's a mustard plant growing right here in the middle of the native plant garden. And you know what? I would remove it on camera right now, but let me show you what's growing around it. Does anybody know what this plant is? Has anyone ever had experience with this before?
Sure. Fenugreek?
Oh, you know what? It does kind of look like fenugreek. I would be much happier to be around fenugreek because this, my friends, is stinging nettle
Poison
plant.
ivy.
Ooh, you know what? It's kind of like poison ivy, wherein if I touch this plant right now, it would do exactly what its name says. It is a stinging nettle, and it would sting my skin, and my skin would itch and burn for the rest of the day. So I am not going to pull this mustard plant right now because I don't have any gloves. That's a good thing to know. If you're going out and you want to remove mustard plant, remember to bring some gloves because you might run into these plants like this. Ooh, looks like there's another mustard plant right here. Let me see if I can remove this one and not get stung. I did. And I was able to pull that out, and I'll take that with me so we can hopefully stop these little flowers from turning into hundreds of seeds. And let's continue on our adventure and see what else I find. Here's some more of that white sage. This one looks like it's going to be blooming soon. So I bet if you come out here, you'll be able to see it blooming. Oh, and over here we have some native grasses. So grasses are also an important part of the ecosystem, and lots of animals, especially those little brown birds I mentioned, they like to hide in the grasses from predators. So these are a very important part of the environment. And oh my goodness, if I back up here, this tree that I'm standing by, that's a native tree. This is actually called an elderberry tree. You may have heard of elderberry before. Elderberry is something a lot of people like to eat. They say it helps them not get sick, not get cold, or if they do get a cold, it helps them feel better faster. And this tree is where they get all that from. So let's see if I can find some flowers. This one's just beginning to flower, but all of those little flower pods are going to turn into elderberries that the birds and the other animals will love to eat in just a couple weeks. Oh, here we go. I can come up to these There we go. We see some of those flowers. We're just getting into springtime, so these will be blooming very soon. Uh-oh, but my friends, look what, oops. Let me switch my camera view. There we go, because look what else we still have growing here. What is happening? We have more mustard.
Mustard?
Yeah, so we are beginning to understand that this mustard, it's able to really travel. This is an area that they're trying to turn into a natural habitat, but that mustard, it's still trying to take over. All right, our last plant that we're going to look at is the black sage. And this is another one I would like you to add to your field guide if you have your field guide, or if you just want to draw along as we talk about the plant. So I'm going to do a little 360 of the black sage plant. And like I mentioned, it is a sage just like the white sage. It does smell wonderful, but the black sage is also the plant that you may have had before when you are eating Thanksgiving dinner, because this is the same plant that they use for the herb sage that you can buy in the store. And this black sage plant, it will produce tons of purple flowers. It does look like we're a little too early for the flowers yet. We're just getting into springtime. But go ahead and start adding that black sage. And Yurid, can you go ahead and show us that next slide that shows us the information about the black sage?
It is up
All
there.
right, thank you. So like I said, black sage is native to Southern California. And you can see in the photo here, we do have some of those flowers that grow on the black sage. And those flowers attract. So these are really important if you want to attract butterflies and other insects that pollinate things like your vegetable garden. It's really good to have a plant like black sage growing, because the butterflies see those purple flowers, they smell that black sage, and they come looking for pollen. The other really cool thing about black sage and why it's a good plant to use in Southern California is it doesn't need a lot of water. We can see how healthy the plant is here that I'm standing next to, and there's no sprinkler here, there's no hose. It's able to survive on just the amount of rainfall that we get here in the park. And it also has adaptations to survive dry, hot temperatures. Ooh, I think we all know that we live in an area that has a lot of dry, hot temperatures. So this is a really good plant if you are thinking you would like to add native plants to your neighborhood. A black sage is a great place to start. Does anybody have any questions about either the black sage or any of these native plants I've talked about so far?
All right, let's see if any questions pop up in the chat. Now, before I forget, I do want to mention that Tanya was able to share a great resource with the California Native Plant Society, calscape.org, if you want more information on the native plants that are found in our local area.
All right, and I see that Sanaa's asking about finding the chrysalis. You know, Sanaa, I think if I spent more time here, I may be able to find some, but as I'm looking now, I don't see any. Another thing is I'm actually right next to the trail. You may have seen some people or heard some people in the background. So I'm thinking if there were any chrysalis from different animals, I'm sorry, different insects, that those have been either picked or maybe they've gone away. So not today, but I will continue to keep my eyes open as we're going to see if I can find those. But if you come out to Carbon Canyon and go for a walk in the native garden and the butterfly garden, I bet you would find some over there. All right, I'm going to continue to walk around the native area, see if there's any more questions. Oh, there's the chair, my chair. Any more questions people have about the native plants?
Yes, Amy, there is a question or comment from Sohan. Is it called a supplement?
Sohan, do you want to give me a little more information about what you're asking about? I think that may have been something I was talking about before, so I'm not sure how to answer your question.
I asked if it was a comment, not a question.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I love that you're adding to the conversation with your comments. Thank you so much. So here we have another native plant, and this is a tree. This is a sycamore tree, and it is also a tree that likes to grow next to water. And the reason we're seeing it is as I'm walking, we're getting close to a stream bed. So when it does rain, there is water that comes down into this part of the park. And that's why when we look down there, I see lots of mule fat and more sycamores and even some more of those elderberry trees. All right, any other questions as I look around? Seeing, oh, here's a plant we haven't talked about yet. Let's see if I can step over here and not get stung by the stinging nettles. But this plant here, this is called horehound. And you may have had a candy before that's made from this plant. So back before we had things like Snicker bars or gummy worms, people would take this plant and make it into a candy. And there's a pretty fun story about this plant and how it got spread throughout the canyons, because when ranchers first lived in California, a lot of them had goats, like we talked about before, and the goats would walk around the hills and the horehound seeds would get stuck to the goat's fur and they would spread the seeds all around. And that is why if you go hiking and walking around in Orange County, you're going to run into a lot of this horehound plant. All right, any other questions or comments as we finish up here today?
All right, I don't see anything coming in the chats.
Well, you know what, Yurid? I'd like to go back to that Bioblitz because we looked at the Redwood Grove, but let's go look and see what people have recorded over here in this part of the park.
All right, so let me move it to your area here. So as I zoom out, you can see all the people that were able to visit. Here's Chino Hill State Park Discovery Center. So somebody was able to find the Southern California walnut tree.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad that someone marked that. I saw that walnut tree on my hike in. And you know what? I like talking about the walnut tree because we all have eaten walnuts before, but I didn't know until I started working as a naturalist that walnuts are actually native to California. So when you see walnuts in the grocery store, you can think, hey, those come from California and they are a native plant here. And yeah, they're pretty cool and they can grow really tall. I think the one here in Carbon Canyon is a smaller version, but it is definitely on the trail and easy to see as you're doing these hikes. What else do we have going on in this area?
Closer to the entrance of the park, I see somebody identified an American robin.
I wonder if that's the same robin that I saw this morning, because that was one of the very first birds that I saw. And that's a really good one to talk about, because remember, we've talked a lot about the native plants that they provide food and shelter. So American robins would love to eat the seeds that grow on the white sage here, or the black sage here, or even the berries that grow on the elderberry tree. Oops, let's see if I can move my camera so it shows you that elderberry tree. There we go. All of those plants provide food for the American robin, and I bet this elderberry tree would provide a great place for that robin to make a nest. We can see that connection between native plants and native animals and see how important it is for both of them for survival. Now that we've talked a little bit about all of our native plants, let's talk about what we can do if we want to encourage more native plants in our neighborhood. So here's some of the ideas that I came up with. And the first one is continue to use that Seek app. I have been playing with that Seek app just like a lot of you have, and it's super fun, and you can use it to identify and see how many native plants grow in your neighborhood and what types, or maybe take a trip over to a place like here, like Carbon Canyon, and see how many native plants you can find. Another good idea is to observe what native plants you see in your neighborhood. So just like that robin or maybe a hawk, You can look at what's living in your neighborhood and see what kind of plants are the best for those animals. Another fun thing to do is to plant a butterfly or pollinator garden to encourage pollinators in your neighborhood. So we talked about vegetable gardens, and vegetable gardens need pollinators. They need bees and other insects to come and spread the pollen from plant to plant. So if you plant different native plants that attract them, like the sages, you'll have lots of pollinators in your yard to make sure your vegetables grow. Does anybody have any other ideas of things you would like to do?
All right, so any other ideas what we can do when discussing native plants or native animals?
And you know what, Yuri, I'd like to expand that question. After going on this exploration of Carbon Canyon, does anybody just have any ideas of have you been inspired to either go out and go on a hike or do anything else out in nature? What is something you want to do after seeing this hike today?
Well, I can start it off, Amy, that, you know, I think you being out there, the reminder of the amount of mustard plants that we have as an invasive plant, and just looking for volunteer opportunities when available, when safe, to go out there and help that removal. You know, seeing even just that one mustard plant amongst all the native plants and how it definitely tries to take hold, you know, around the native plants, definitely encouraging me to get out there and see what I can do.
Awesome. I'm glad that you're inspired to do that.
And
Anybody
Amy,
else?
yeah, I am so inspired by the insights that you shared and the plants, and your enthusiasm is contagious. So I am so inspired to get out there and continue to use my Seek app and learn as much as I can about the plants that live in our local environment. And it's just so calming and soothing to be able to see and experience what we're seeing on the screen. So I can't wait to get outside, Amy.
Awesome. And I agree with you, Giselle. It has been so nice for me this is my first day back in the field after a lot of hours teaching it from my computer. And I agree. It is so calming and so nice to be out in nature. And I really hope that everyone is encouraged to come out and spend some time in nature.
Yes.
And we do have a comment from Santa. So she loved seeing the different plants, learning about nature around us, and also would love to continue using the Seek app. So thank you for sharing that, Santa.
Very cool.
Yes.
Oh, and I see let me click. I see another one coming in, and I'm going to plant black sage in my garden, and we'll be walking through Carbon Canyon this week. Other people are agreeing they're going to do that as well. Awesome. That is so great. I hope all of you get a chance to come out here and explore your neighborhood, because it's not just places like Carbon Canyon that have plants like this. I bet if you walked around your neighborhood and visited some of the parks in your neighborhood, you can find some of these plants there as well.
Yes.
So you go ahead.
Sohan said he's going to do it too.
Awesome. That is so amazing. And hopefully next year we can all be together and explore the park as a group.
Yes, I cannot wait.
All right. So Yuri, I'm going to turn it back over to you to wrap things up.
Thank you, Amy. Really appreciate you being out there. And like she mentioned, you know, hopefully next year we can all be there in person, hiking, learning about some of the native plants, native animals. And we definitely want to encourage you to visit your local parks. Carbon Canyon Regional Park is a fantastic area to visit with your family and friends. There are native plants, there are trails, there's Redwood Grove out there, there's fishing you can do, bike riding. So again, it's that mix of, you know, things that you can do with your family and also get away and get that wilderness experience. You can visit the Redwood Groves like I have right behind me and continue using that Seek app. So we didn't see many observations in the Redwood Groves, and even that area where the native garden is, where Amy was filming from, we didn't see many observations of the native plants. So it's another opportunity for you to learn and kind of build that database. So again, thank you. And I was able to look at the community field guide. You can continue adding to that. That's something that's really, really great tool. You can kind of get all that data of what everyone's seeing in your school, in your district, in your neighborhood. So thank you very much. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and pass it along to.
To me, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amy Erickson and Yariv Deming from Inside the Outdoors for that educational experience and for the virtual tour of Carbon Canyon. It was great. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. We have 6 winners who we'd like to acknowledge for their participation and contribution to Experience Your Environment. The first 4 students have participated in the Bioblitz and have contributed to the PYL USD Community Guide. After we announce your name, please send your email address in the chat box to Giselle so that we can email the Starbucks gift cards to you. Our first winner is Sanaa Garish. And I'm going to try. Oh, it's not letting me share my screen, Giselle. So we'll just have to do it this way. It's for some reason I'm not able to. I wanted to share your awesome.
I can share it. I can share it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I wanted to share your contributions, Sanaa. Look at that. So she contributed to our guide and she is our first Starbucks winner. Our second Starbucks winner is Aiden Huan. And he also made a great contribution to our guide. Congratulations, yay! You're very welcome, Sanaa. Thank you. And make sure you get that if you have your email address too. We can get that prize to you. Our third winner is Anderson Huan. Yay, looking from Bryant Ranch. Excellent job. I love the picture. Very nice. And our last winner of the Starbucks gift card is Jude Castaneda. And I think he might even be on here too today, listening in. Nice, wow. Very, very fun. Thank you again to all 4 of you for your contributions. Now our last 2 winners will receive the Richard Nixon, the Environment Package, a new outdoor exhibit at the Richard Nixon Library. The package includes 4 tickets, 2 for adults and 2 for youth, tickets to the President and the Planet exhibit. Please help me congratulate Michaela Gill. And Michaela made multiple contributions to our guide. Wonderful. And our second winner of our tickets for the Richard Nixon is Sohan Shah. Yay, Sohan. Yay. Yay. To close out the event, please help me welcome Giselle Nguyen, the Vice President of Academics.
All right, thank you, Anne. I want to thank all of and congratulate all the winners. And if you haven't already done so, please give me your email, and then we're going to be mailing you your gift cards and packages in the mail. And at this time, I'd also like to thank Inside the Outdoors, Amy and Yarib, Jenna from PYUSD and the entire team, and also Crystal Cove Conservancy, and our generous sponsors who support Experience Your Environment and the STEM education, like Golden State Water District, Carl and Marge Kesselik from Delta Y Electric and Union Bank. And of course, on behalf of the Reach Foundation, thank you all for being here, for being curious, for participating, and for your ongoing support of the Reach Foundation. We aspire to bring the highest quality enrichment programs to our students and families. And I also want to tell you an event that's coming up next Wednesday at 7 p.m. We will host a speaker panel featuring 4 fabulous PYL-USD alumni who will share their personal stories and challenges from their college and career. So join the From the Inside speaker series next Wednesday at 7 p.m. All high school, middle school students and families are welcome to attend this free event. And for additional information, please check out the Reach4 PYL-USD website. And I'm going to drop the survey into the chat box as well right now. And if you could take a moment to fill out the survey and give us your feedback, I would greatly appreciate it. And that's basically our program. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday or at our next event. And have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Please continue to learn, observe, and protect our environment. Thank you all. All right, maybe you could all unmute. And
Thank you, everyone.
yay. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Jenner. And
Yeah, that was wonderful. And let me know if you'd like, if your family wants to test some local water sources.
yes, we'll do. Thank you, Jenner. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Get outdoor and explore, everyone.
Yes, bye-bye.